About Beer receives underwriting support from Fox Farm Brewery. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. This week, it's a treat for everyone. Stan Hieronymus moderated a panel last week at Mighty Fine, the IPA festival hosted by Good Word Brewing. It's entitled How Craft Beer, and IPAs in particular, are changing the hop industry. And he's joined by a trio of smart folks who are going to share copious amounts of knowledge. You'll hear that in just a moment. But first, please keep up with all of the events and everything else we have going on here at All About Beer by following our social media. We're at All About Beer across the major platforms. If you have comments, guest suggestions, or just want to reach out, you can email me at John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. And speaking of email, if you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter. That's one of the best ways to get all we're producing right to your eyeballs. We're also supported by you. Please go to allaboutbeer.com/support and learn how just a few bucks can have a huge impact on supporting original journalism in the beer space. On that note, thanks to this episode's sponsors.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60-minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60-minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
If you're running a brewery, owner or operator, Beer 30 by The Fifth Ingredient is the ultimate command center. The most powerful brewery management software on the market, Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow, from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp makes it easy for breweries to stock up on the essential packaging and promotional supplies all in one place. From beer labels and keg collars to coasters, beer boxes, and more, they've got you covered. Plus, every product is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee, and their full-time support squad is ready to help anytime. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. Stan Hieronymus needs no introduction. His career chronicling the beer industry and hops in particular have helped countless brewers and enthusiasts up their game. He was in Duluth, Georgia last week for Mighty Fine, the IPA festival hosted by Good Word Brewing. And during the fest, in the All About Beer education tent, he moderated a panel called How Craft Beer, and IPAs in particular, are changing the hop industry. He was joined by farm owner Diane Gooding, Liz Bauer of Garston Hops, and Alex Nowell of Mellowtone Beer Project, who's also a brewer and a CLS Farms consultant. They discuss how the partnership between brewers and growers have evolved over the past 20 years, share insight on how the role of terroir and farm practices play in hop aroma and flavor, and how the industry is adjusting to a slowdown in hop sales. Here's their conversation.
What we're going to talk about today is hops from the grower's standpoint. However, Alex can actually give us the view of hops from both sides, which is pretty useful. So a little bit of background, educational-wise, for those of you who don't know. The best-selling style in the United States at the beginning of 2008 was not IPA. IPA became best-selling that year, and that required different sorts of hops. And in the early years, and we won't go into too much history because what had been perceived of as a hop shortage, a lot more acres went in of high alpha hops. And those hops weren't needed, and that left the space the first few years for the new varieties to come in without needing expansion. So in 2012, there were 32,000 acres of hops. By 2021, there were 61,000 acres of hops, almost twice as much, 29,000 pounds more. Of that, 12,000 pounds were Citra. There were 500 pounds of Citra in 2012. And 6,500 were Mosaic. You throw in Eldorado, Strata, Simcoe's Growth, because Simcoe was around, Sabro, and Idaho 7, and that's 85% of the new acres. So they dynamically changed it. A few years ago, when everybody recognized there were too many hops, acres started coming out, and acres were reduced more than 30%. So that's sort of where we stand now. So it's been a great time for hop growers and a not so good time for hop growers. But to begin with, I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, tell you about them, because you'll see we've got a diverse group here in terms of the hops they represent. So why don't we start with Liz at the other end?
Liz Bauer with Garston Hops. We're in Southland, New Zealand, so we're 4 degrees south of the traditional hop growing region up in the Tasman region up at the top of South Island.
You might tell us how long it takes to drive from your place to the nearest hop yard.
I actually haven't done that yet because fly into Queenstown.
Yeah.
But I think it's something like 15 hours. Yeah.
So my name's Diane Gooding, and I am a 6th generation grower from Idaho. Our family started growing hops in the Willamette Valley actually in 1895 and moved to Idaho in the mid 40s. So distinctly different than New Zealand. Our area is a fairly arid and dry climate, and our hop makeup kind of reflects sort of what Stan kind of went over at the offset of the talk.
Yeah, I'd say Idaho growth was phenomenal that period, more than doubling, I think. And those hops, without jumping ahead, those hops, many were proprietary, and therefore the owner of the hops could tell the Idaho growers that you have all this infrastructure here, but you're not allowed to use it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few moments. So Alex, both sides of the coin.
Hi, my name is Alex Nowell. I am the co-founder and brewer at Melatonin Beer Project in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I am also a technical brewing advisor for CLS Farms in Yakima Valley, Washington. So I do own and operate a brewery. I've been in the brewing industry now going on like 17 years, which is a long time as a brewer. I've seen a lot of different iterations of the industry, and then I've been involved with CLS as a customer for over a decade, but started working with the farm a little over 4 years ago in a capacity that gets me on the farm during harvest and just kind of helping to bridge the gap between like the ag world of hops and the end user in brewing.
Yeah, so once again, tell us where CLS, the main farm, is.
CLS is located in Moxie, Washington, so it's in the Yakima Valley. So that is one of the largest hop growing regions in the world.
And the closest hop farms are?
Across the street.
Yeah.
We are surrounded by other people's farms. We farm over like 50 miles, like 2,300 acres in a pretty diverse area. So the closest hop farm is right next to our baling facility.
It's also very close to Loftus, where Citra hops was developed, and the owner, one of 3 owners of Citra hops, and then also very close to Roy Farms.
Yes,
as
very.
An example.
You can see them across the valley.
So, you know, when you talk about, we'll talk about terroir, which is how the place hops are grown can affect the hops. We disregard everything around wine and terroir. There isn't a mystique. There's a difference between growing hops in Idaho and hops in Moxie. And when they're picked and how you deal with them and everything else. So thinking back, Diane, when you left the farm for a while, what year did you come back?
So I graduated high school in 2002, and I moved to California, actually. So reverse commute of what most people are doing in Idaho as far as moving into the state. And then I lived in the Bay Area for between 2004 till about 2010. 2010, I came back to the farm early June. I was working at kind of a tech job in a basement, and I was worn out on working inside. And so I asked Dad, I said, hey, you need a little help? And he says, God, if you could check the mail and do the payables. This was in April. I called him, and he didn't check the mail between April and June 1st. And it was chock full, and then I had to go to the post office. So he needed some help. And so I learned the ropes from him, and he's retired now. So I took over operations in about 2013, 2014. He had some health issues. So, and now we grow a bunch of different crops due to kind of, market turmoil in the hop side. But it's been a great learning experience. And my two sisters have joined me as well. So we are a female kind of run and operated production.
So when you came back to the farm, how often did you see brewers visit the farm?
Well, Dad grew for Anheuser-Busch in the late 90s and early 2000s, and when Willamette acreage really started dropping off, he just, the contracts matured, and the Willamettes came out. So they were always a presence on our farm. I remember, Daryl Smith and the guys, Val and them coming by. So that was kind of an exception. Certainly craft brewers were not really on the radar. When I came back to the farm, we predominantly grew for Steiner, Hop Steiner, and a mix, some Aroma, but mostly Alpha production. So, the craft guys weren't so much into that. And then having been in San Francisco, I was like, well, we should grow some other stuff. We had, I think, 3 or 4 varieties, and now we grow 12 or 14 different varieties on the farm. So some of that's small plot work and so on. But it was definitely not, craft wasn't focused particularly on Idaho during, from 2010 until 2014. I got Hop Quality Group to come, I think, in 2015 or 2016.
So how did you know what they wanted to be grown?
Well, I talked to people, and I asked them, which it sounds kind of like simple, like, we'll talk to people and see what they want you to grow and then sell it to them. I'm like, but the dealers at that time, there was a huge roadblock. They did not want growers communicating with the end user. They did not want that relationship formed because they want to control the pounds and the production and so on. So, and control the dialogue, which in turn controls the pricing. So that was, I just went out and honestly, I went and up to CLS and met Eric. I was interested in El Dorado, and I kind of harassed him and Shelly into letting me grow some. That's a different story.
I've heard the other side of this story too. So.
That's for reals. And I learned from Eric and other growers in Washington what they were growing, what harvest windows and growing techniques and so on. So they were quintessential in the evolution of our farm and where we are today.
Yeah, and so I guess the two parts of that communication are right now, it's got to be hard for you to think about putting anything into the ground unless you know somebody's going to buy it.
Yeah, we don't, I don't speculate. Dad said more people go broke growing hops that aren't sold than not, so we don't, and the cost of production is just so intense and high that you can't really risk. You could, literally lose the farm. So we idle stuff, or we've converted a bunch of our hop fields, because we've been growing hops for a long time, maybe this ground's a little tired, needs a break, do a little bit of a crop rotation and into some row crop production. We do fresh produce as well, so we have all the food safety stuff, so might as well grow other things that are food-based products, onions, peppers, sweet corn, watermelon, so on.
So Liz, you're not actually at Garston, but I think you know the story. So Garston's
The accent threw you off, right?
Yeah, is a little bit different. There isn't a long history of multiple generations and what's there, and you are far away from anybody in Nelson.
Right.
So how does Garston deal with that?
Yeah, so the farm itself is a 6th generation farm.
Yeah.
So mostly been in sheep, as many farms in New Zealand are. And they just recently ventured into hops in 2016. We work very closely with Freestyle. We're not a part of Freestyle, but they do our pelletizing, packaging, and then we also ship to Falmouth and Long Beach, same as they do. So yeah, they've been amazing, and I'm sure that relationship has really helped us to grow. Yeah, being so far away from like where the pelletizing plant is, we ship bales up. So that's how we do it now. Maybe plans for having our own equipment at some point in the future, but yeah, right now we don't have the same hop turmoil as we're experiencing in the U.S. We're actually expanding quite a bit in production. So, yeah.
Overall, though, New Zealand, like every place else, reduced acreage. About that, there is no central source for how many acres of hops in New Zealand, so it's a little hard to track. But the general consensus is New Zealand, and we could also talk about Australia. So, New Zealand and Australia, since 2008, Australia has more than doubled its acreage, and New Zealand has tripled its acreage. Again, those hops, New Zealand exports 90% of the hops, and they're counting on U.S. craft to be a gigantic part of it. England as well. The people in England have basically abandoned English hops. English hops where there used to be, this is way back where you would have 80,000 acres. There's now, CLS Farms is bigger than all of New England. Oh, England, not New England. So New Zealand has made a gigantic impact there, that's for sure. So Alex, when did you start, like CLS, as a brewer, begin to establish relationships with farmers themselves?
It was when El Dorado was commercialized. And I didn't meet them before using it for the first time. I actually did a collaboration with Mitch Steele while he was still at Stone for Celebrator Beer Magazine's 25th anniversary. I was brewing at Drake's at that point in time. And we did this collab with Stone, and I was like, I'm really interested in this new variety, El Dorado. And he's like, that sounds great. I've wanted to brew with it for a while, too. So we made this beer together, and that was the first year that I went to Yakima. And it opened my eyes up to, like, the fact that, like, farmers are also people. They weren't at the time all that open to accepting too many people onto their farms, but CLS has always had this really great open door policy, and they're incredibly welcoming. And Eric will speak with you, Eric Demray, one of the owners of the farm, will speak with you so openly and frankly about what's going on in the industry. You hand him a few beers, and even more so. And so I was just immediately welcomed into this farm, kind of as a member of the family, and an early adopter of El Dorado, which is like their baby. And so I think that kind of got me into their graces a little bit as well. But I asked a lot of difficult questions from the brewing side, but it helped educate me as a consumer. And I became a much more demanding hop consumer from all of my dealers at that point, but like within reason. But I've always been fascinated by agriculture, and hoppy beers have been my favorite. I've been a California brewer until I moved to Ohio. Well, I live in Kentucky technically. But until I became an Ohio brewery owner, my entire career as a brewer was in California. And so I've always had a very strong focus on hoppy beer. So it only felt natural to become so involved with the farms. But CLS, I came on as a very, very limited, like, sort of technical advisor, and I spoke for the farm at events and things like that, just because, like, they know how to farm, but when it came to communicating with growers, that wasn't natural to them. But understanding both languages kind of made me a really easy go-between on that, and it's helped educate them how beers are made, how hops are being used in the beers, which has also led to better conversations with like our customers about what they want.
So can you talk about how CLS's approach to maturity has changed over time?
Yeah, well, they've always done field-based maturity, and so we do believe that everything has a harvest window, and we pick within every hop's prime harvest window, which can cause some chaos on the farm during harvest. Remember, there was one day a few harvests ago where I think we dipped in and out of 5 different varieties, which can cause a lot of logistical headaches, considering they're all going into the same kilning facility.
That's like a hop grower's worst nightmare.
But Eric takes it on, like, because he knows, like, if it's ready to go, it's ready. Or sometimes you have to fit things in because you only have so many days to pick. And all of the hops have, especially aroma varieties, maybe not as much alpha varieties, right? But when you're focusing predominantly on aroma hops, you need to be mindful of like the prime aroma of that hop. And so we take a very manual approach at maturity, whereas a lot of farms will look at dry matter and determination of when it's ready, or have sort of historical windows of when these hops are ready. We know that certain varieties are ready around approximately the same time each year, but we're watching these varieties to make sure that the aromas are there, because the brewer cares about the aroma of this hop. They may not care that there's a little bit of extra added color to it. Like, no one's looking for a pearl green hop anymore that doesn't really smell like much. There might be a little bit of coloration in that hop, but it's going to be the best possible aroma for it. So I think that I've pushed them past their comfort zone on some varieties aroma-wise. It's a very friendly fight between Eric and I throughout harvest on the fact that I always want the hop to hang a little bit longer. And the more that I've worked on the farm, the greater understanding I get of the logistics side of what you need to pick, like what has to be picked. And so I'll give a little bit, but I push them on a lot of varieties, and I think it's for the better. I think it's for the better. I think they do too. And then we're also able to kind of almost have this bespoke picking operation where like every brewer has an opinion of what they want. And so within some varieties, we can actually tailor the harvest to that specific brewer's
So real quickly, from a grower standpoint, Diane, some of the problems, what happens when somebody like Alex shows up and says, I want you to leave this in the field 3 more days, as a grower, how much does that screw you up?
3 days isn't a big deal. 3 weeks can be. No, I mean, now with the farm sizes being smaller, we're very nimble. I feel like we can execute on a super high level because we can really pinpoint, like, okay, this customer is our main customer of Centennial, say, and they like, a mid-pick. So that would be like in Idaho, if we start on the 25th, that's maybe the 30th or something like that, So it can cause a little bit of chaos, but harvest is that way. I mean, it's just chaos in general. So, like, a little bit more I don't feel like is that detrimental. And it also is just planning. We have a plan, and then we remake the plan, and then we shift the remade plan, and then we throw all of that away and then make a different one, So it's just, and that's where your team comes in to, great effect is like, my sister and I, we run the show. It's our deal. And then, it's like, okay, we got to turn the irrigation off on this day because we're picking that 5 days from now and it needs to dry out. And it's communication and working together because, we, as hop farmers, we can't do it all ourselves, So I can make the call, but then our whole team executes on getting that done.
So Liz, since you're relatively new at Garston, and Garston's relatively new, obviously Freestyle has done a lot of research on when they're going to pick the hops, and they'll specify whether you're getting early pick, mid pick, late pick. Is Garston going in that direction as well?
Yeah, we definitely are, and we're working with brewers as well, looking at what they're looking for. For example, like we have very little early pick Motueka because we've heard enough feedback from brewers that they're wanting the mid to late pick.
So you working with the University of Auckland at all on that. They're doing more research, I know that, and Freestyle's working with them, but
I don't know the answer to that.
you will be.
Yeah.
That's my guess, as everybody in trying to move that dial forward. I think we have lots of time, but one thing we want to get to. So, Diane, you're recent president of HRC, right?
I'm current.
Oh, you're current.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
one of HRC's project has certainly being and helping find more funding for public hop research and for public hop varieties. And there's a recently named, still waiting for the press release to be approved by the USDA, simply because USDA is behind them. Everything for a new hop called Vera, and Vera was grown on your farm, right?
Yeah, we were the original test plot in Idaho, so there was HRC, for those that don't know, is Hop Research Council.
Okay.
So it's our industry's main public, plant health, pathology, so on, research organization, nonprofit. We work closely with a lot of different university researchers, USDA, so on. So Vera was formerly HRC3, and the number is like W1103-333 or something along those lines.
HRC03.
Yeah, yep. The numbering system in research can be a little draconian, I think. But so we planted the original planting 2 acres 4 years ago. 2020, I think it was 21. And, we've been growing it since, and it's tested super well at all the hop sensory. The brewers really liked it. And, when you go to release a new variety, you want some pull. You want industry to kind of pull it forward, because if you're just pushing it out there, then if there's not any backing behind it, it's not going to go anywhere. And we've seen some of those varieties that kind of floundered and flopped around, and then eventually they just kind of disappear, or just go down to acreage that is, so small it's irrelevant almost in the scheme of things. So we're hoping Vera will have some good traction. I think Eric's going to put some in also too. It's a great agronomic variety. It doesn't get powdery mildew. I think we've had to spray it maybe once for spider mites. So it's a good yielder, very grower friendly, and it's testing really well in a bunch of different beer styles across all the breweries that have been using it. I had a beer yesterday, a hazy, that he just did it as a dry hop, and it was like the most intense apricot I had ever experienced in a beer. It was like mind-blowing. So it's got some legs, and it's got some depth. It has some spice component. We've tried it in a lager. We've had it in pale ales and so on. So I think we're pretty excited about it.
So why are public hops good for growers?
So, the public hops are open and available to anybody, growers or brewers. It's an uncontrolled product. So, I had a vendor ask the other day, "Hey, do you guys have a logo?" I'm like, no, we don't. I mean, you can make one.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want, man. Like, it's the world's your oyster, right? So, from that standpoint, and hop growers won't, I don't think, speculate a lot. So if there's not the pull and the customer base around it, I don't know that they'll necessarily put in like hundreds and hundreds of acres of this variety. But if there's demand, then they will, and they have the option to. So you can go find the material, put the plants in the ground. You don't have to sign your life away, and go and sell them into the market. And you can set the price. You can sell them to who you want, or it's the most flexible opportunity. And there's arguments that maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should be a little more controlled. But that's just where it is right now. And I like the sort of open market approach to letting things sink or swim.
So why are they good for brewers, Alex?
I have so I have a lot of opinions on the public program because I love the public program. I'm a huge proponent of public hop use. They're great for brewers because you do have this sort of unrestricted access to it. And because it's not proprietary, it typically comes at a better price. just really nice. Everything is more expensive right now. I don't know if everyone's heard, but everything is more expensive. And so our margins are whittling down to almost nothing. And last I checked, brewing is a business. So we need to have a profit margin involved. Otherwise, we can't survive. So, but in terms of like releasing and promoting a public hop, I do think that there needs to be a little bit more work done on that side, because you have varieties like Vista that I've personally worked really hard on from the CLS side, because it's a really great hop. It's great agronomically. It shows beautifully in the field, but it just has a marketing issue, right? And so we've worked on it for several years on the farm, and we're finally gaining traction just as a farm and expanding out Vista as a variety. But it took a lot of really hard work to do that. And I think that there's also the flip side of that, not just the marketing, but not every grower is going to grow it with the same amount of care as like Gooding or CLS when it comes to picking it at the right time, because it's not a controlled variety. And there is no person telling you that this needs to be picked during this window. Sometimes they end up becoming the sacrificial lamb of the farm, and they get picked at the completely inappropriate time. And if you've had a hop, if you smelled a hop that wasn't ready to be picked, it smells like nothing. Aroma develops so rapidly in a hop variety. So I think that there's pros and cons to the approach of it right now, but I also know that I love seeing something like Vera coming out, because I think that hop has a lot of promise, and I think we're moving in the right direction towards better managing how these public hops are released, because there's so many hops in the past that were just released and they are gone now. And there's dying varieties like Cashmere, which I love so much. That's
the
kind
beer
of
I'm
in there.
drinking right now, as a matter of fact.
I love that hop. So
and John might want to edit this out to give you an example of picking windows. In Australia, 15 years ago, everybody fell in love with Galaxy hop, sensational hop, and there were brewers could not go make a selection, a field they like it from, and everything. They blended everything, and this hop was and is about 60% of production, and that's really hard. You've got 4 or 5 weeks to pick hops, and you want to spread that out over time so you can kiln them and get them processed. So that meant Galaxy was picked too early. A lot of Galaxy was picked too late, and that's where you get that diesel flavor, and unfortunate. Now, Hop Products Australia has expanded everything. Haas has invested century-wise, so I'm sure Galaxy is much better now. And before we started this, walking around talking to brewers, and they're going, I quit using Galaxy. And Galaxy is going to need to reintroduce itself as thinking about now it works in this window. And that is, which Alex brought up, that's a hard thing. If everybody says, I can grow Cascade. So talking about public hops, that includes Cascade is really the first hop to come out of the public breeding program in 1972. Willamette is not much after that. But Chinook, which around here, people making West Coast IPAs, a lot of them will have Chinook in it. Centennial, another public hop, which has also varied tremendously. Alex will be nodding her head, saying yes, so much in quality all over the place. And that's a hard thing. In all fairness to the companies that own the proprietary hops, for those of you who don't know, that would be Citra and Mosaic are really big ones. El Dorado is another proprietary hop, but not as expensive to growers.
Free market proprietary is what Eric likes to call it.
Yeah.
So we give a grower guide, we give suggestions on what it should be, but no one's going out into the field and being like, you haven't picked your El Dorado yet, what's going on?
Yeah. So there are differences there. So Liz, you're in a different situation. So Garston is allowed to grow the hops that are everything before Nectaron and Superdelic. Would that be right?
Yes, as far as I know. I'm not quite sure on the timeline with that, but we have our version of like the public varietals in New Zealand as well. So at Garston, we grow Matuaka, Nelson Sauvin, Rocco, Riwaka, and New Zealand Cascade. And we don't grow any of the proprietary.
But before Garston and Freestyle and Revolution, there basically everything came from NZ hops, and that was treated as a proprietary hop. And they controlled how much of that could be grown, and people had to spend more money probably for Nelson Sauvin.
And there was no traceability. And forget lot selection. That was not a thing.
Right. And that's a change. So if somebody wants to go visit Garston, which they should because it's a beautiful place to go to, can they make
you
selection?
need to come back too.
I know. Well, we only saw it from a distance. So, can people make selection with, and how would they make selection? Is it doable with hops after they arrive in the United States?
Somewhat. And as we expand, we'll get there more where we'll have more spot hops to be able to select from. But yeah, right now we have quite a few breweries that are given lot samples from each varietal that they're interested in, and they're able to select.
So another example, I'm drinking a beer from Alex, which is with Kashmir, which was a public hop released in 2014. Farmers in Idaho fell in love with this at the beginning, right, Diane?
Yeah, I actually so there's a virus-free plant network, and I went actually with a couple of other growers. I sat in the back seat, and I brought my little trial plants home in the back of the truck there. But yeah, Kashmir, it's a really beautiful hop. I fell in love with it right away. As soon as it was released, I couldn't get my hands on it quick enough because we had seen it as a numbered variety previously at HRC, and I always liked those single hop beers that had it in it. And you know, we planted a bunch. We never had more than I think about 40 acres of it. We've got 17 now, and that's a good number for us. And I can really pinpoint that harvest and make it perfect, right? So you know, our Kashmir is very fruity. I mean, in the kiln, it's like Fruit Loops, almost. You walk in there, and it's like a wave of this, like, just fruity and sweet, which I think is kind of the preferred.
Yes.
It can be not that way too. And those are less sought after. So we see a little bit of a roller coaster, and our Kashmir was always, really consistent. And so that acreage in the state has ebbed and flowed as other growers had more challenges with it. Agronomically, it's a little tricky to grow. It has some disease problems.
Sometimes I've heard it just stops growing.
Well, if you over-fertilize it, it will crack. And there's like this sugar water that seeps out of it.
Drip.
Yeah, and the wasps come and like go to town. It's wacky. So like in the test plot, we saw this, and we went through the researchers, and they figured out kind of what was going on. So I mean, it's nice. We just don't have to put very much fertilizer because it's a very vigorous plant. I mean, it'll get huge. Does get downy and powdery mildew kind of bad, so you got to treat it similarly to like a CTZ for disease management. But you know, it now as we're releasing new varieties, Vera is the first one, and you know, speaking to that public variability, the breeder has put together a variety sheet. Yeah. So you know, kind of actually copying a little bit what Eric did with El Dorado. Is, you know, and it's not like, okay, we're gonna come and inspect your farm. Oh, you harvested on, you know, September 12th and not 20th. We typically have harvested on Michelle's birthday, which is my sister's birthday is September 20th. It's always it's my present to her. Here's an annoying test plot to dry. So, but yes, you know, and now communicating between growers with the dealers, with the brewers, I think we're seeing a lot more stability in quality on some of these public, some of the newer varieties, and Vera, I think, is going to be a testament to that. You know, Roy's were the other farm that have had it in the test plot thus far, and we've compared a lot of notes, and I'm sure Eric, you will be, you know, we are always going back and forth. So the growers that are into it, and quality is your focus, you're going to talk to other people that's their focus too. Yeah. And naturally, just like in the brewing community, like brewers will, you know, share this, that, and the other thing. I know there's some secrets, but you want to collaborate because that makes everybody better.
So one thing we should talk about, talking about New Zealand, we've been talking about diseases, and one plus to New Zealand is, keep your fingers crossed, so far they're very seldom have to spray. They do have spider mites, but at a low enough level, which is one of the things I love about this, is bringing in predators for spider mites as opposed to, which more brewers in the Northwest are doing as well, certainly in Oregon.
Every grower now in Idaho, in southern Idaho, actually even northern Idaho too, we work with a company called Copert, and they actually set up a delivery twice a week, refrigerated van that the predator mites go directly into cold storage, and then they get dispersed at night. So the pesticide load in Idaho, and I'm sure in Washington, as technology gets improved and plant management gets improved, all these things are advancing with that, which is essentially reducing your pesticide load, which is our ultimate goal as growers. We're growers, we're not killers.
But I loved talking to a grower in Oregon that actually that their spider mites are delivered by a drone.
Yeah, there's drones. The strawberry people use drones a lot. The thing why that's less ideal is because the predator mites actually climb up the plant. So if you already put them on the top, you missed all the stuff from the ground to the top.
Yeah.
So we have it's like a side-by-side thing with big blowers in it that blow the bugs onto the plants, kind of gets them to the side, and then they crawl up, and as they crawl up, they eat stuff, the bad stuff.
So we've reached the point here where we're actually saying just welcome to the weeds as we go deeper into talking about which are neat growing things and super important to what happens down the road. So think about it, Alex, and the first time you went to Yakima was at Three Weavers, not before that.
Drake's.
So at Drake's. So what has changed to your beginning to ask more questions and the things you learn along the way?
There are far more growers open to having these conversations because they're used to seeing us more. Yakima definitely caters more to the craft brewer now during harvest than they ever have. They do make it a bit of a party, which can be a little stressful when you're actually there working. But because harvest is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, at least on CLS. Some people do break on the weekends, but it's not us. And I don't know, I just think it's become a more open and welcoming valley to even the smallest of brewer.
You go to Leon's party?
Yeah. When I get invited, I always get invited. Junior Loza is one of my favorite people.
Yeah. So that's just an example of the fun culture that exists there. And at Garston, you've got to feel a little bit isolated. So have you been there during harvest yet, Liz?
Yeah, I went for the first time over harvest. I was there for a month.
So are more brewers showing up? A combination, of course, sort of important to you, Australian and New Zealand, even though U.S. buys so much of your hops.
Yeah, most of our customers by far are U.S. breweries. We want many more to come out for harvest, and the timing kind of works for them to come out and do the events that are up at the top of the South Island first, because we start harvest 2 weeks later, being 4 degrees more southerly. And so, yeah, we did have a handful of U.S. brewers come out for our harvest event. We do a really fun thing where we bring fresh hops out to a local brewery. Well, in Queenstown, it's an hour away driving, but we take them by horse and buggy, and then by train, and then by boat all the way to Queenstown. So everyone that comes for the harvest event gets to be a part of that journey. Yeah, it's fun.
So there's a bit of a show in selling your hops, which didn't used to be the case. For instance, Diane, when it was Anheuser-Busch showed up and said, "This is how good it is, and these are our specs, and can you meet them?"
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen a bit of a shift there. I mean, I think part of that's generational too. You know, we're seeing younger folks, whether that be brewers or growers, you know, the families are transitioning and the next generation is inherently more fun. Like, Alex and I are more fun than my dad is. So we put our own little stamp on it, I think, and that's part of it. And you know, these unique experiences, they're memorable and it's just enjoyable. And we love to entertain. We don't get as many visitors as compared to Yakima. I don't know if I could handle it, to be quite honest.
It's a lot. You get very tired.
I'm the entertainer, and I'm the bail deliverer. So, but it's a really special time of year, you know, and to share that, whether that be with brewers or the general public, I think is something really special that as an industry, you know, you're not going and having a big party at the mint farm. You know, like it's going to toothpaste or, you know, Listerine or whatever. And hops is such a neat product and industry in that way, is that we all like get along, whether it's New Zealand, Idaho, Washington, Maine, South America. I've met hop farmers in Brazil, and we all it's like Dad says, hops, they get to be in your blood. And once you're a part of it, you can't get out of it. It's like an addiction or something.
I think we're supposed to wrap it up here. So let's wrap it up with talking about Cascade, which was the original public hop, still a great hop. And first of all, Liz, what do you call Cascade? Are you using the New Zealand one?
So we cannot call it Tahiki. So
because
we're
that's
just New Zealand Cascade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's actually our most in-demand hop varietal.
So you might explain Tahiki and Cascade.
Yeah, I don't really know much about the difference. I mean, genetically, it's the same.
Yes. So NZ Hops renamed it.
Okay.
That's why I'm curious. But I didn't realize you can't call it Tahiki, and that is meant, for one thing, to point out how different it is, because Cascade is a hop that is grown around the world because it's a public hop. It's grown in Germany, it's grown in England, it's grown in New Zealand, it's grown in Australia, grown in South.
They grow it in Brazil.
Quite honestly, I don't think quite as well, but that's just my opinion.
Don't say that to them.
I will. Pretty good in Argentina because they.
Because we want to get into like photo period and LED supplementing, and it's crazy.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Brazilian hop world is just its own episode.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
A different episode of this. So Diane, Cascade to you?
You know, Cascade from the grower side is a really lovely hop. It's an earlier, we kind of do, you know, before the 10th of September typically in Idaho. Dad always kind of was annoyed by it because it's a square cone, doesn't roll down the dribble belts very well. But, you know, we try to get the oil up, kind of taking a card out of Eric's deck on that regard. And it's an OG, you know, it's a tried and true, you know, about what to expect every year. It's very consistent. You know, the new virus-free material is really healthy and vigorous, and it's a nice hop. You know, we like it. We've got 22 acres still, so that's sweet.
As a farmer, so what price do you need to get for that hop, just for it to be break even?
Stan, come on, man.
That's collusion.
Oh, boy.
So the question is based upon you need more than $2 per pound.
Don't ask me those questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, on
the number is more than $2 per pound.
Right.
Yeah, the number is definitely, it cannot start with a 2. We are 50% below the cost of production there. I mean, all the you know, if I can have that price start with a 5 most days, I'm pretty happy with Cascade. But to each their own, I suppose. You know, break even now is not, I mean, that's kind of the goal. If you're breaking even, that means you're not going backwards. And in this industry, in this market right now, you're winning.
Yeah.
So
your first experience with Cascade, Alex, as a commercial brewer?
We put it in a lot of beer at Drake's.
Yeah.
It was a nice kettle sort of filling edition, right? It's a good background for a lot of different things. And actually it's Roger Davis who's here with his brewery faction. It was like the late edition kind of flavor-ish, aroma-ish edition in almost every hoppy beer that we made back then. But still a really good old standby because the price is right, especially when you have farms that focus on oil content. It's just a really nice variety. And then, like on CLS, we started pushing the boundary on Cascade a bit more too, where we have a traditional, our virus fields tend to get picked early. Our virus-free stuff hangs a lot longer. And I think 2 years ago, we picked our virus-free Cascade in October.
That's ridiculous.
No,
I'm sorry. Eric, Alex, was that your idea?
It was a combination. It's just what needed to happen.
Yeah.
It smells amazing, though.
Well, did you get any to the kiln? Because I would think they would just fall apart in the picker.
They weren't. They were still green.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Actually, Oregon can pick them super late.
Yeah.
Too. I always give you guys crap.
I know.
That's pushing. That you just tore the envelope up.
I know. It's very
Doesn't
different.
make sense.
Yeah, no. But it made me a little more excited to use that. I'm still using that crop year of that. With a little bit of it left in our inventory, and I don't know. It smells different. It breaks the mold.
I'm happy
of
to
Cascade.
have this conversation about Cascade going forward and picking it late. And Liz, do you have something to add?
We love Cascade. It grows just as well as the Motueka. It's a beautiful plant, and it does well from beginning to end, and it seems it is in high demand and will continue to be. So, yeah, we're loving it.
Okay, well, we got to wrap this up. We're out of time. We're going to take the headphones off, and then I'm going to ask you one more question about Cascade off the record.
Thanks, Stan.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Stan.
All right.
My thanks to Stan and the panel. I'm back as usual next week, but in the meantime, go visit allaboutbeer.com where you can check out new content as well as the archives going all the way back to 1979. You can always reach me on email anytime at johnholl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And before we run, here's a word from this week's sponsors.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60 Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60 Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp makes it easy for breweries to stock up on the essential packaging and promotional supplies all in one place. From beer labels and keg collars to coasters, beer boxes, and more, they've got you covered. Plus, every product is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee, and their full-time support squad is ready to help anytime. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. Market. Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow, from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. Don't forget about the All About Beer podcast channel. Just search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice and then subscribe and never miss a new episode when it's released. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.